Have you heard about the ancient Mayans? They are famous for their mysterious calendar, which some people once thought predicted the end of the world. Long ago, the Mayans were the strongest and most influential group of people in a region called Mesoamerica. In our journey, we're going to explore the fascinating and secret-filled world of the Mayans. We'll learn about how they understood the stars and the sky in ways that still amaze us. Also, we will try to figure out why this incredible civilization suddenly disappeared. We will see how the Mayans became so powerful, built huge and impressive cities, and why they eventually disappeared, leaving us with many questions and a rich history that still captures our curiosity. Learning about the Mayans isn't just about studying old events. It's more about connecting with a culture that had a big impact on how the Americas developed. In 2012, many people were worried that the world might end, just as the Mayan calendar was finishing a big cycle. What did the Mayans know when they created their calendar? How did this extraordinary ancient group start? And what led to their disappearance? We're going to look closely at the Maya, the most significant civilization in Mesoamerica. Many years ago, around 40,000 to 20,000 BCE, groups of people traveled across a land bridge. This bridge connected what is now Alaska and Siberia. They were searching for places with warmer climates, better hunting grounds, and more plants to gather. Eventually, they reached the area that is now known as Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, between 10,000 and 8,000 BCE. They also settled in other parts of southeastern Mexico, the Yucatan, and some areas of northwest Central America. The Mayan highlands, lowlands, and coastal regions were full of useful natural resources. They found things like obsidian for making tools, beautiful jade, and plenty of fish in the waters. By around 6,000 BCE, these early people began farming more intensively. This led to them having more food, which meant the population could grow. The early Mayan civilization developed around these abundant resources, and their culture started to really thrive. From 1500 BCE to 250 CE, during a time known as the preclassic period, small villages began to grow. These villages turned into larger communities, and eventually they became the early states of the Mayan civilization. This growth began around 1700 BCE when they started making pottery. Pottery was important because it made trading easier. As trade increased between different groups in Mexico and Central America, a wealthy and powerful class of people emerged. They started to control the others. This created a social structure that many other civilizations would later follow. Small chiefdoms, or areas ruled by local leaders, started to form. In these chiefdoms, one village would have power over the smaller ones around it. By around 1200 BCE, the more developed Mayan villages began trading over larger areas. They met other societies like the Olmecs. The Mayans adopted some Olmec practices, like their religious beliefs, city planning, rituals, and artistic styles. As the Mayans became wealthier and more powerful, large cities started to develop. These cities evolved from the chiefdoms into early state-like structures. With the growth of these states, wars became more common. Mayan rulers would attack other groups to gain wealth, workers, and to eliminate rivals. Around this time, the lowland Mayans, who lived near rivers and lakes, began moving inland. Their influence expanded to the highlands around 800 BCE. The early Mayan states began to form around 400 BCE in places like Caminaljuyu, El Ujuxte, and El Mirador. These developments were driven by both war and trade. In these regions, you could see the growth of the Mayan state through the construction of huge and elaborate buildings. For example, the Ladanta Pyramid in the ancient city of Mirador was the largest pyramid in early Mayan civilization and in all of ancient Mesoamerica. It stood at 236 feet tall. However, life in these states was not always peaceful. Revolts and fighting were common, and no state was completely safe from internal conflicts. Other challenges like volcanic eruptions, overpopulation, and overusing the land might have contributed to the decline of the early Mayan civilization around 150 CE. When the Mayans along the Pacific coast started to lose their influence, the Mayans in the lowlands began to gain more power. The city of El Mirador, once a major center, declined, but this led to a burst of artistic and literary development in the lowlands. Around this time, the city of Tikal, now located in modern Guatemala, rose to prominence. Tikal, with a population of about 100,000 people, became a dominant force in the area, extending its control over neighboring regions. During this period, the main focus was the rivalry between Tikal and another powerful city, Calakmul. After Tikal weakened due to a long conflict with Calakmul, many smaller states declared their independence. Calakmul emerged as the most powerful city of its time. This era was marked by significant cultural and intellectual achievements, particularly in the fields of astronomy and the development of the well-known Mayan calendar. However, No empire is eternal. Around the 9th century CE, both Tikal and Calakmul collapsed because of continuous wars and environmental problems. Their cities were abandoned, and these once great centers turned into small villages. This marked the end of what is known as the Mayan Golden Age. Following the downfall of the southern lowland cities, the Mayans of the Yucatan Peninsula became more influential. This era, called the Terminal Classic period, saw the resurgence of older cities and a greater integration of Mayan culture with other regional cultures. During this time, Chichen Itza became a significant center. Its strategic location in the northern Yucatan, which focused on sea trade, contributed to its rise. As Chichen Itza grew in importance, it became the hub of a vast trading network. Meanwhile, the traditional rulers started losing their grip on power, and society began to function more democratically. These shifts signaled the end of the Terminal Classic period and the beginning of the Post-Classic period. However, Chichen Itza's prominence was short-lived, and by the mid-11th century, it started to decline due to warfare. By 1100 CE, it had lost its status as a major power. As the Mayans' influence waned, the Aztecs to the north began to gain more power. When the Spanish conquerors arrived, Montezuma, the Aztec leader, tried to unite all the Mayans to resist the Spanish. However, by 1530, the Mayans had not united against this common threat, leading to the Spanish conquest of the highlands and Pacific coast Mayans. From 1527 to 1530, the Yucatan Mayans fiercely resisted the Spanish, even defeating them in 1535. But the Spanish kept sending more troops, and by 1546, after a final battle, they had conquered all Mayan territories. This conquest was devastating for the Mayans. 90% of them died due to European diseases, war, and enslavement. By 1697, their civilization had largely faded from history. Mayan societies varied in their political structures. For example, in Chichen Itza during the late Post-Classic period, the royal family ruled collectively in a system called multipole. 10% of the population were elites, while the middle class consisted of low-level priests, soldiers, and merchants. Farmers and laborers, who were commoners, formed the lowest social class. It's widely agreed that kings were the ultimate rulers in Mayan states. These kings, from royal families, controlled important resources like obsidian. However, their power was not always secure. Challenges such as droughts could undermine their authority. Capturing or sacrificing a Mayan king could bring chaos to a city. Despite their eventual downfall, these rulers wielded significant power. Warfare was an integral part of Mayan life. Kings were not only rulers but also prominent war leaders, often depicted with trophies from their enemies. A key military figure was the Nakam, responsible for organizing armies and strategizing in battle. The Nakam, a title given to the chief warrior, was often a member of the nobility and played a crucial role in military decisions. The military elite came from the upper class, while commoners and middle-class individuals served as soldiers. This division of military roles underscored the hierarchical nature of Mayan society, where social status influenced one's responsibilities and privileges. Mayan warfare, often misperceived as primitive, was in fact sophisticated and crucial for the survival and expansion of Mayan society. Their warfare was driven by the need for political control over people and resources, with one significant objective being the capture of sacrificial victims. These sacrifices were more than just ritualistic. They were deeply intertwined with the Mayan ideology, often linked to sacred fluids and the passage of time, and were essential for legitimizing rulers and intimidating rivals. The Mayans employed various tactics and weapons in their warfare. One of the most notable was the atlatl, a spear-throwing device that greatly enhanced the range and force of their spears. This weapon, along with obsidian blades, projectile points, and close-range combat knives, formed the core of their arsenal. Interestingly, despite having projectile technology, the Maya predominantly engaged in close-quarter combat, employing methods like thrusting, stabbing, and crushing. The warfare strategies were not rigidly structured due to the challenging terrain of their homeland, characterized by dense forests and rough landscapes. This led to guerrilla-style tactics, well suited to their environment. Initial attacks often involved volleys of spears and arrows, aiming to weaken the enemy before hand-to-hand combat ensued. Archaeological evidence, such as the fortified city of Aguateca, reveals the involvement of royal elites in both the manufacture and execution of warfare. The discovery of weapons like obsidian spear tips and chert bifacial points in royal residences indicates that rulers, scribes, and artisans were actively involved in military conflicts. The capture and destruction of cities like Aguateca around 810 AD demonstrate that the goals of Mayan warfare were often to diminish the influence of rivals, rather than occupation or annexation. What is your favorite old-time civilization? Let us know in the comments. Smash that like. and subscribe for more.